Apple news keeps coming on the daily, and today we have not 5, not 10, but 7 new major stories for you. With the first one definitely being the most shocking, and that is Ming-Chi Kuo now saying that the iPhone 15 Pros won't come with those solid-state buttons anymore. Now, this is truly shocking if true, as we've had a ton of leaks on the haptic buttons happening. We've had leaks from Shrimpapa Pro, Anonymous AS, the guy who actually leaked the dynamic island on the iPhone 14 Pro. Then it was also reported by analysts from Barclays, and even visible on those leaked CAD models, as well as on the leaked dummy units. Like, all the pieces of the puzzle were pointing towards this happening, and now Ming-Chi Kuo is saying that it won't. So how likely is Ming-Chi Kuo's statement to be true? Well, I would say quite likely, as Ming-Chi Kuo was actually the first to even report on the iPhone 15 Pros getting the haptic buttons, and then all the rumors and CADs backed his report. Okay, but why the sudden change? Well, according to Kuo, Apple is having some technical issues that they were unable to fix. And since mass production is set to start very soon, they will no longer be able to include those solid-state haptic buttons in the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max. Tech analysts Jeff Pu and Shelley Cho have also reported the same thing now, that based on their supply chain checks, the iPhone 15 Pros would move back to the physical buttons, with only the iPhone 16s in 2024 now set to be getting those long-rumored solid-state buttons instead. This is really disappointing, as that means that the 3 most major iPhone 15 Pro features, the solid-state buttons, the customizable action button, and those 2 extra haptic engines for enhanced haptics all over the phone, won't happen anymore. Unless, of course, Apple takes a different approach. An approach where they're still using the same layout that we've seen in the CAD models. So with the unified volume buttons and an action button mute switch, it's just that these buttons would physically press as opposed to being haptic buttons. And in theory, all the functionality of the action button that we were talking about in the previous video could still apply. Like, you could still hold it to activate silent mode. You could press it once for custom action 1 and then double press it for custom action 2. I feel like they kinda need to give us at least this, as otherwise the standard iPhone 15 Pro would be a very minor upgrade with it lacking that periscope module of the 15 Pro Max. The second story comes from the Chinese version of TikTok, where a user apparently got his hands on the very first iPhone 15 Pro dummy unit. And here we can clearly see that unified volume button alongside the redesigned mute switch. Now, you gotta remember that this dummy unit was very likely based on the previously leaked CAD models, which did have the redesigned volume buttons and mute switch. So this leak doesn't really show us anything new, but rather, what would the iPhone 15 Pro look like in real life should Apple actually go ahead with its design for the buttons. At number 3, global eSIM might not happen anymore, and this isn't necessarily due to a new leak, but more like a result of Apple not adding those 2 extra haptic engines anymore, which I previously theorized as the reason for Apple removing the SIM tray globally, as that was the component that was taking up the most amount of internal space, one that was already removed from the US models of the iPhone 14s. However, that's likely not the case anymore. Shrimpapa Pro and Unknown Z21 also believe that the SIM tray is to remain in place, so yeah, global eSIM is extremely unlikely. Next up, we have some news on the next version of Apple's Studio Display. Mark Gurman did say back in December that Apple was working on multiple new monitors. And Russ Young also said back in December that Apple would be launching a new 27-inch monitor with mini LED technology in the first quarter of 2023. Obviously, that didn't really happen. However, now Russ Young has stated that Apple has actually killed off the display for good. At least for now, which is really, really sad. But the thing is, it's not entirely cancelled, as Ming-Chi Kuo has now tweeted that it's actually been delayed to 2024 or early 2025 instead. Yeah, things are not looking great for the next version of the Apple Studio Display. Now, Kuo does at least say that it would indeed have a mini LED display, thinner bezels, and a thinner body overall, which is great. And he's also saying that by the time it launches, it would have all the features of a high-end monitor. But what does this actually mean? Likely that it would also have 120Hz ProMotion, and all of this sounds great, as it fixes the 2 main issues with a Studio Display at the moment, which is the LCD panel and the 60Hz refresh rate. But it doesn't really address the third issue, which is the cost. You see, at $1,600, the Studio Display is outrageously overpriced, as you can literally buy a larger 4K OLED TV with a 120Hz refresh rate for less than that. Now, of course, if you give the Studio Display 120Hz and Mini LED, it becomes a much better deal, especially since Mini LED can get much brighter than OLED. but I wouldn't be surprised if Apple bumps the price to something like $2,500, and they call this the Studio Display Pro, whilst keeping the Studio Display for the same price as now. In my opinion, what they should do is drop the camera, drop the speakers, drop the extra ports, and especially drop that A13 chip and the 64GB of onboard storage, and then keep the cost as low as possible, whilst giving users the best display possible. In fact, if they were to release that exact version of the current Studio Display for, let's say, $500 less, I would guarantee you that way more people would buy it, despite the lack of these features. And next up, we also have some updates regarding the 15-inch MacBook Air. So, according to Russ Young, the panel production for the 15-inch Air started in February and further increased in March, with even more increases expected in April. All of this, of course, points towards a WWDC launch looking even more likely now. But if you have watched our WWDC What to Expect video, you probably know that Apple's mixed reality headset is also rumored to debut at this WWDC. And there simply wouldn't be enough time for Apple to launch all the new versions of iOS, iPadOS, macOS, and watchOS, while also announcing the headset and the development kit for the headset, as well as this 15-inch Air. That just wouldn't be enough time. Also, remember that the 15-inch Air is rumored to feature the M3 chip, which means that Apple would also need to make room for unveiling the M3 chip as well, and likely some more M3 Macs, such as the M3 13-inch MacBook Air, the M3 13-inch MacBook Pro, and maybe even an M3 iMac. What this tells me is that Apple would either just tease the headset for only a few seconds and then spend most of the time talking about the Reality OS that would be driving it alongside the development kit for developers, and then also launch the 15-inch Air with the M3 chip, with the 13-inch Air and all the other M3 Macs coming later at, I don't know, the October event, or they would just put the M2 chip inside the 15-inch Air and release it via press release, like it was previously rumored, and then spend more time on the headset. If you guys remember, before that M3 chip inside the 15-inch Air leak, the 15-inch Air was rumored to come with the M2, and it was also rumored to come in April or so, which Russ Young has also recently reiterated. My money would definitely be on Apple spending more time on the headset rather than taking time away from it in order to focus on the 15-inch Air. So yeah, if anything, the M2 15-inch Air via press release does seem more likely, with the M3 chip to come later in the year. Speaking of the headset, apparently Apple has now axed their exclusive manufacturing partner, Pegatron, and switched to Luxshare instead, which is really weird, especially doing this at the very last minute, likely something that would cause further delays. Apparently Pegatron are not too upset about it, because in order to maintain profit margins, they would have had to manufacture a larger number of headsets, and Apple was already not expected to sell many headsets anyways. So yeah, definitely an interesting thing to happen, especially this late in this development cycle. And lastly, iOS 17 is now rumored to come with some major changes to its control center. It's not really clear yet as to what this means, if it means a complete redesign or, I don't know, just some extra functionality. But yeah, iOS 17 is rumored to come with a lot of user-requested features. And if you want to learn more about everything that iOS 17 is set to bring to the table, we've done a separate video just on that. Also, iOS 17 was rumored to drop support for the iPhone 8, 10, the first-gen iPad Pro, and the first iPad, due to a vulnerability that's affecting all chips from the A5 to the A11. However, leaker Anonymous AS says that this is all wrong, and that all devices that support iOS 16 will also support iOS 17. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on everything, especially on the iPhone 15 Pro button situation. Definitely stay tuned for more iPhone 15 leaks videos in the next few days. I'm Daniel, between ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.